God, the God, what you call God, by whatever names, but particularly in the traditions of our ancestors and ourselves, what we refer to as God isn't very accurately portrayed in religions. Both is and isn't, I would say, is more accurate. The God of the Old Testament is pretty specific. The God of the New Testament, which Jesus seems to be referring to, doesn't seem to be the same as the one in the Old Testament. And that's the primary reason which his teaching was considered to be controversial. Otherwise, the elders would have stuck up for him and prevented either his demise or escape when the new identity or whatever happened. But there's a very wide spectrum in which human existence exists, and it goes far beyond the visible spectrum of light, which is a very narrow bandwidth. And while there are people who can see into the infrared and the ultraviolet spectrums, even those two spectrums essentially just make up 3 spectrums. And the number of spectrums or octaves of spectrum probably could be put at 7. Those would probably be the ones that are primary to our existence. But that's not to say that that's all there is, that there's not many more. All the happiness and excitement and disappointment and fear and pain and love and anger and hate, basically, God feels all of that. To some extent, I would hope that over time it's to a lesser extent, because that's just an unimaginable burden to place upon even the creator of all reality and civilization and the world. And while the world may be 5 billion years old, which is what we've aged some of the bacteria. I think in Canada we aged it that old. There's just a lot more to this world than people even want to know. The path that I've taken in life, that I've lived in life, truly, for better and often for worse and painful, has been unlike that of any other living person, possibly in recorded history. But there was a time when I worked in a glue factory, but more importantly, there was a time when I worked at a fiber company. It was 12-hour days, 4 days a week, I think, and it was 4 days on, 3 days off, or 2 on, 1 off, 2 on, 2 off. You could choose. And when I first took the tour there, I saw the different positions. You started out as a baler. Just every 7 minutes would be a bale, and you'd have to pull the wrapping up around it and pull the wrapping down, and then put these straps around it to hold it, and that was it. And it would wear right underneath your fingernails. That would all get red and aggravated from the burlap. But if you were lucky and someone higher up left, which was unlikely, then you'd move to the line, and then you'd operate the machines a little bit. But if you wanted to make more money, you had to be there longer and wait for more people to leave. But the highest paying job in that place was in a room with about 2 feet walkway, 2 feet wide, and there were straight up blue hot flames coming up, and I don't know what they were I can't remember what they were doing, but they had their the glasses on to protect their eyes. But that room was I think it was about 120 degrees, and that's what they said, but it was probably much hotter at times. And I've always been kind of sensitive and intuitive, which has been detrimental most of my life. It's gotten more useful over the years. But when I looked at those guys, I could see their insides, I could see them melting. I just knew that their insides had to be liquefying from working in that heat. And the guy who gave me the tour, I'm sure I said something because it was astonishing. And he said, you know, that this is one of the places where people can make a living and support their family to some extent. And that, and this area, that was one of the best, if not one of the only ways to do that with any consistency. But when you're working 12-hour shifts and you need to sleep, everyone's got in the habit of drinking a 12-pack so they could sleep. And I told the guy I worked with, I said, I did drink a 12-pack and I still couldn't sleep. And he said, you gotta drink it. You gotta start sooner, drink it faster. And I got an insight there into how soul-crushing that type of a job would be in the long term. And when I make my long videos and people say, you know, I just want to kick out my feet and not worry about like anything, I think back to my attempts to navigate the normal world, and those were my major attempts. And it becomes your entire world. Your job becomes your entire world, your whole existence, especially in these, you know, I wouldn't say it's unskilled labor, but if you don't have a college degree, and now even if you do have a college degree, you're still screwed. But if you don't have a college degree, you're lucky to get something like this. And for whatever reasons, I mean, obviously, you know, I had my back's been broken since I was 16, but it held out for a while, long enough for me to try in the world. But the way things work out is you have options and you can choose paths, and that's true for everyone. But what you're doing with your life is more or less what you're supposed to be doing, and that's just how it works. That's where the world needed you. And as I've said before, even when I tried to get my massage therapy education, which I did do, and I did really well at it, and I got the most advanced. I was very, very lucky to get the best mentor that any massage student in the world could ever have, bar none. I was lucky, but I was also very dedicated to learn. And despite already having a relatively phenomenal knowledge base, I totally put my ego aside 100%. I did everything that was asked of me for 16, 18 months during my mentorship. So, on top of school and family, it was, 3 to 5 hours a week with my mentor, and then whatever homework he gave me for the week. And the last 3 months of that mentorship was the study of consciousness and energy. And through what he gave me to study, that led to basically extraterrestrial, or what we called then extraterrestrials, and in the last few weeks of that mentorship, I had a craft visit me at Exeter on Front Street. I described in a video. So the normal, I can't blame the regular average. There's nothing wrong with being average. It's really, if you can do that, you're lucky. But there's so many paths that people that aren't average or can't do the 9 to 5 Joe the plumber routine. And a lot of those paths, every path has its ups and downs and its difficulties, and that's kind of just built into our society, which has been refined to make it, the money matrix. The more money you spend, the more money you make, and that's the shell game. And I had a friend briefly, for a while, until I asked him a favor, and then he bounced like a basketball. He had worked at the FBI as an X-Man. He was one of the guys that the show was based on, some of his cases. And I asked him why the UFO community refused to acknowledge me and let me in. And I asked him if there were ongoing X-Files where people who have obviously had a lot of contact, where there's a observe but don't interact policy. And he said, they're afraid of you, and that's why they're not giving you any opportunities. And yes, they are. And chances are that's what he was trying, or what he's probably still doing, even though he's not a friend of mine right now. So that brings us back to this concept of God and the spectrums of God, the fullness of the human experience or what they called the Human Potential Movement back in the 60s at the Esalen Institute, which was a weird place. But in the 50s and 60s, there were tremendous amounts of research and energy put into not only cultivating images for, the average Joe, like in the documentary I recommend called The Century of the Self, made by Sigmund Freud's nephew. They just figured out how to make products and convince you that, this is you. You need this kind of car. That way they could have capitalism be successful, because, you don't just need a washing machine. You need a washing machine that's right for you. You need an everything that, is you. Like the dude in Fight Club says, about, decorating his apartment. And that's the century of the self. That's the conditioning. For the working class, the middle class, and even the upper class. There were also many experiments, group experiments, individual experiments, and they're still going on. All of this is still evolving and, changing and adapting to the financial situation and the times. And like I said to a guy who was a good friend of mine, my artist friend, he was a good friend of mine, the guy who did my magic to my specifications, the guy who did my magic square and the artwork for my band. I said how much respect I had for people that could be average Joes. And of course, he was the average Joe during the day, and then a working artist at, the rest of the time, and that, so, I don't know, he didn't seem to, I don't know, I guess he disrespected me for that, because I couldn't do the average Joe thing, because I'm just not an average. There's just not a lot of average Joe to me, and then there never was, but over time there just became less and less of me that was average Joe. And much more often than not, in general, as a person, walking around in a human body, in a society, in a world, it's a kind of a downer to be different, fundamentally different on whatever levels. And I think it's important that people who do the average Joe thing realize that they're lucky to be doing that. And they still can experience a phenomenal amount of emotions and experiences. Living the average Joe life doesn't make a person unremarkable. It just makes it more difficult to show their remarkableness to the world, because they're more reliant upon the social norms, which are all built into the century of the self, and the images which you're asked to buy into. I'll give you an example. There was a guy I know, and he's in the income bracket where it made sense to me that he'd have a Toyota. He just seemed like a Toyota guy. And he's like, yeah, I have a Toyota. I'm like, you had a Subaru before that. And he got kind of freaked out. He's like, legitimately, he was like, how did you know that? I said, I don't know, you just seem like the type. I guess the further you get from the average Jonas, the clearer you can see things, and the less there's pressure on you to be saying what society says they want to hear. Society doesn't really know what they want to hear, They wait to hear it, and then they say it. That's like the thought conditioning. It is the mind control. It's the control of the will and the genius. They tell you what you want or what you don't want, or what someone else wants and wants to do. And you know how it goes from there. It's a shit show from there, because it's not about freedom anymore at that point. It's about controlling other people, and it's America. That's what we call it, right? And land of the free, home of the brave, and all that. Maybe we're not as brave as we used to be. But I don't think that's it. I think there's a tremendous amount of vital energy and primal energy that's still in all of us. And to some extent, due to our modern comforts, it's dormant, but I think it's rising out of necessity. And you could say it's the Schumann resonance, or the resonance of the earth. But I don't believe that. That's what they tell us. But really, they're using us to raise the resonance of the earth. Because that energy comes from humans. And the collective energy of our consciousness and our beings creates the Schumann resonance. It's how they are that's what they're actually measuring. They're not measuring the resonance of Earth. They're measuring the resonance, the vibration, the energy of humans. And that's a bigger topic that I was thinking about a lot earlier today, and I do want to talk about more in depth, but I don't want to do that right now. But I was thinking about the future and praying a bit, and just, I wanted to both be sure and then be sure I had permission to talk about what I saw for that foreseeable future, and permission was denied. But it was granted to explain the complexity of God. And I know that I talk about gods, I talk about gods like the Atlantean gods and the Tuatha De Danann. And I show you pictures of things which are probably scary at times, because people, I'm sure people think, well, what does that mean for me? Like, that's like the normal response. Like, if there's a volcano erupting, 5 miles from you or 10 miles, you're like, or something like fantastical is happening. Your first thought is like, what is, what does that mean for me and my loved ones, right? And that's a basic primitive biological impulse. So it makes sense. But the things that I show you, and the things that I experience, and the things that I do and have done and have accomplished and have proven, they may not be part of your daily life, just as the things that are routine in your life aren't routine in mine. But the things that I show you in the experiences I tell you about, they are my regular life. And I know that it's unusual, and I know it's to some degree it's supernatural, and as I said in a video the other day, my friend Rob said that I was a superhero, and that was really cool. It's just, I've received a lot of insults in my day, a lot of trolls, a lot of threats. I've endured things that you wouldn't even like believe or like want to know about, and I don't tell you about most of it because it's partially designed to like freak you out and alienate you, like if someone's being bullied, you're like, I don't want to be. It's just like being a kid. Oh, if I hang out with him and I'm his friend, then I might get bullied too. And that's just, again, that's a basic human survival instinct. So I understand that. I mean, you gotta pick your battles in this world. And in the average Joe sphere of life, the battles that I pick? I pick because it's the world. It's within the world of what I live in, and who I am in the world, who I am to the world, as just, you know what I'm saying? It's just who I am. So then, I mean, and nobody wants to talk about angels. I don't know why, and I say this often. People will often mention fallen angels. And it's, to me, it's like, you know, with my understanding of creation and the world and the energy, it doesn't make any sense. Like, literally doesn't make any sense at all. None. So, you know, but there's a lot of fear. So I guess real quick I'll get into the fourth dimension. So the 3D world is everything you see, touch, experience, interact with that's regular. And having, even seeing supernatural things or UFOs or having like encounters with otherworldly beings, they're coming into your world. So for the most part, depending on how open you are to that experience, you're likely to still be in the, what you call, or what you're told to call, the 3D world. The fourth dimension is fear. The fourth dimension is ruled by the what God created to keep people safe from becoming supernatural enough that natural slash normal slash average Joe life would be difficult. Like if you lived my life, you would have you'd call in sick. you'd call in sick, and then you'd get fired pretty soon, most likely. But so when you first truly leave the 3D and you leave what is called the 3D, you might get bitten. And there's a term for it, but I don't want to share it right now for the mere fact that I'm not ready for this aspect of what I teach to show up on a bunch of UFO and science pages cited to some anonymous scientist, which, as I've mentioned, has happened many times. And that's just the stuff that's happened on Facebook. You know about the other stuff. But over time, you leave the 3D, like, you get wounded, like an injury, like a minor injury, and then like a wound, and then, you're wounded, and then you're like hurt, and it takes a lot of determination, a lot of faith, and a refusal to be afraid, a refusal to let people tell you that it's bad, like when I was sharing pictures early on, not early on, like in the last year, I had some great pictures, and I was sharing, and people were loving them. And then I got abducted or whatever, and I left 3D, and I got wounded, and I posted pictures of the injury, and people were like, "Oh, I knew it. I do this thing to keep those things out of my house." And I was like, "Bitch, are you kidding me? Like, I know for a fact that you were like loving these pictures and you thought this was all great, but you just resorted back to fear." And even the other day when I posted the picture of the crafts that caused the earthquake 6.2 miles from here, 6.3 kilometers down into the earth at a 2.5 on the Richter scale earthquake, somebody said, "Oh, it looks like you're under attack. You might want to go away for a few days." And I'm thinking, you fearful person. Like, does it, And there's probably some degree of good intention in people saying things like that. But, I understand psychology. There's also some jealousy, like, which I think is more misguided than people know. But they have an opportunity to be like, "Oh, thank God. Now I can, tell him to correct his path and be fearful, because that will make me feel better about not being able to do what he does." And that's just like common sense. So yeah, the fourth dimension is fear. Hold on, I'm going to look at the comments here. I don't know if I can even see this. It's dark in here, as you can see. I didn't even want to make the video tonight, but I was advised to do it now. So the fourth dimension is fear. It's fear, it's fear, it's fear. And it's scary. It's absolutely scary. Imagine you're laying in bed. Let me paint a picture for you. You're laying in bed. It's like 3 a.m. You wake up screaming in pain. Feels like your leg's on fire. Somebody just stuck a hot poker into it. And you wake up and you're scratching your leg with your toenails of your other foot. But the pain goes away within seconds. So you're like, you've woken everybody up. But then you're fine. You're like, whatever. I'm fine. You go back to sleep. And the next day you wake up and you got a hole and a couple marks on your ankle. And yeah, that, you probably saw the picture, or maybe you didn't, but that happened sometime, I think, October of 2016. I had two that month. But yeah, that's happened. I honestly couldn't tell you how many times now. If I said 100, if I said in the last 20 years or 30 years, it's been 500 or 1,000. I couldn't even guess. I don't know. It's been often though. It's happened on a regular basis. But that's helped me, keeping my faith in God. My ultimate faith that God's overseeing all these things. And remember, I asked God for permission to seek God outside of the average Joe Christianity. And it was the Christian God I asked. And He gave me permission. And that's why you have the Da Vinci Code, the Lost Symbol, Inferno, Origins, and Disclosure. So, God put me to work. And to get to where I'm at in that journey, to where I'm like, people mess with me too much, and then there's an earthquake. It's taken more than you'd want to give, unless you wanted to dedicate your life to this. And I mean your life. I mean like you're on call 24/7 for 20 years. Because that's what it is. That's why, what is it? I don't even know what time it is, but I'm making this video now. And I didn't even want to. So, to get through the fourth dimension, and this may be the only way to, maybe it's just like for a human to, or any being in a human carbon body, to be able to go into the other realms, as Tesla would say, and interact with and have any meaningful relationships there. You have to be able to do this, and maybe it's as simple as that. And the beings that guard the fourth dimension are just there to prevent everyone from getting sidetracked. They make it so difficult that if you're not like completely determined, then you'll be dissuaded because it's painful, tedious, and other people, unless you're lucky enough, I'm lucky enough that I was able to prove it beyond any standard that any reasonable person could ever come up with. But again, we're talking 500,000, couple thousand, I don't know, injuries, instances of in and out of this realm, basically. We'll stick with realm. So, I wonder sometimes if that's the only way to break the reincarnation cycle. And, the Aztecs and the Mayans, they were pretty on the ball with some things, far more than we are as a society, or at least what any level of our society below top secret, official top secret clearance would ever have access to. And they said there was a 26,400 year cycle reincarnation, and some other cultures I won't mention just because I don't feel like it, but some that I'm fond of and post about often, said that the soul growth, or the growth of God, relies upon the way things are. You live X amount of time, and then your soul reincarnates. But at some point, maybe at some point you're tired of it, and you want to go somewhere better and stay there longer. And I say somewhere better, but you'd probably call it heaven or Valhalla or whatever you think heaven would be. I don't think sitting on a cloud and with angels playing a harp would be like your idea of a good time. You probably like bowling or throwing darts or playing pool or going to the range. Or for the warriors, they like fighting. So I think Valhalla would be like, they fight during the day and they get drunk and eat and feast at night, and then get with their wenches, they're all drinking ale, partying, and they love that. So that would be like their heaven. That's like what Valhalla is. That's one version of heaven. So I don't know what your heaven would look like. I'll tell you more about my experience with my angel ET girlfriend in my profile picture, and going up on the craft and what I saw there. I don't know what I've said about it, but I think I've said that the stork is real, and I'd stand by that to this day. But see, I can't say what's true for everyone, because I don't know. I think that just like I live in the world that I live in, and I live in it so strongly that I can photograph it, prove it, fucking earth shakes. That's like the world that I live in. But and it is part of your world, just like your world's part of mine, and all our worlds are connected in the 3D, right? But that fear is the mind killer. You want to expand your consciousness, You want to grow. I don't know what you want. I don't know what you want. I don't even know what I want half the time. So I don't know what you want. But I will fill you in more on that at some point. It's really weird stuff, man. Like some of the pictures I've seen leaked from top secret military alien installations are the same things I've photographed outside of my house, and were some of the things I've seen on the ships. And sometimes the ships are actually stars. And sometimes the stars move, and sometimes the crafts are alive. Yet they're able to have part of themselves be the passenger. I'll give you an example since I just thought of it a little while ago. I took a picture of an alligator that was fighting with a cat on the shore of some river, and the people had put chicken on the edge of the river, and the cat was a bastard, and he wouldn't let the crocodiles come up. And I looked at that cat, and I think millions of people had watched that video, but I'm me, so of course I look at it and I'm like, I see weird things. And I'm like, what is that parasite looking thing on that cat? And nobody else saw it. And I looked at it, and yeah, there was absolutely something up with that cat. Like, without any doubt whatsoever. And then I looked at a picture of the crocodile, or the alligator, whatever he was, and the side of his head opened, and there were like dudes sitting in there. and then I was thinking about what is it, Star Wars or Return of the Jedi or The Empire Strikes Back, where they have those really tall things that are walking, and they just have those like two lasers shooting out of like the face of the thing, and they use like the plungers, and then they like fly around it and wrap its legs up, and it falls on its face, and it's like, what a waste of a giant machine just to do that. But then I thought about dinosaurs, and I'm like, hey, what if a dinosaur was like a machine, and whatever was in the machine couldn't get on the earth, but it wanted to get samples? And I thought of that because of what I saw with the crocodile. And that was just one crocodile or alligator, so I can't speak to anything else on that particular aspect. But today I watched the movie called The Arrival. Not Arrival, the newer movie, which was pretty lame. The older movies are better. I watched E.T. yesterday, and it was like made in 1982, and E.T. is nice, and everybody likes E.T., and E.T. wants to phone home, and he's a nice guy, and people like him. And then the next one, I think, was Contact. And they played some music in the desert, and the dudes came down on the ships. Everybody was happy. And who was that? George Lucas that made that? And then, I don't know. somebody, I, I, I know who the somebodies were that made the decision, but they decided that ET needed to become less friendly. So, anyway, when The Arrival was made, I watched it today and I was really surprised because it said, they hear a signal in space and then, these mean ET show up. So I'm watching it, and the way that the beings changed into human form was really interesting to watch. And if you watch The Arrival, then it might be worth telling you more about it. But if you don't watch it, it won't mean anything to you anyway. Just like if you don't watch Century of the Self on YouTube, you won't understand what I was saying there. So I'm trying to give you the tools to learn and the knowledge, and by giving you the knowledge, give you the incentive. Century of the Self is like 4 hours. The Arrival is, like an hour and a half. Or The Arrival. But the way that they phased in or whatever into their body was it was very interesting to me because in one way, only in the way that it was shown how it happens, it was accurate. But what the before and after of the situation was not accurate. Like, the way they look before and the way they look after is not accurate. Not at all. And that also ties into evolution. There are people that say, people don't change. People don't change. Despite the fact that we have this, idea of Darwinism. But Darwinism's ridiculous. Like, okay, everyone's from Africa, and we evolved from monkeys, and monkeys, we don't know where monkeys came from. A rodent which lived in the ocean, because all life came from the ocean, that whole rhetoric. But it's like, if we came from Africa, then why are there still monkeys? If we were in Africa, then why are there still Africans? It doesn't make sense. It's just not true. It's just a lie. It's just a lie. And that's just a fact. I guarantee you it's a lie. I'm telling you factually that it's a lie. If you can't count on me to give you accurate information about anything at this point, then I don't know. So I came up with the theory that people don't change, they just become more like who they are over time. And that is change, because they're evolving to become themselves. So it's a paradox, but it's really not, Yeah, it is, but it's still true. But it depends on how you define the word. So let's say people do change by becoming more like who they really are over time. And it used to be, for a while, like every 3 months, I would notice like a change. And I don't know if it was a change in the world, a change in the world's energy, a change in me, But it was on a 3 month, every 3 months, I would just feel it. Something, I would always say, something changed. I can feel it, something changed. And men do have a 3 month hormone cycle, but nobody knows that because we don't bleed. But men have a 3 month hormone cycle, just like women have a 28-day cycle. And that's a fact too. It's not always 28 days, yeah, I know. And the man's isn't exactly 3 months either, but it's rough. Roughly. So then I came up with this idea that every night every night we die, and every morning we're born again. You know, like the sun. You know, like the Son of God, right? it dies at night, it comes back in the morning. And that's not where I got the idea from, but it's a nice little analogy. So the phasing that they showed of the ET arriving and the arrival was pretty cool because I've seen it. But it was also pretty cool because it was like layer after layer after layer. And in my current philosophy, every day we're more like ourselves as individuals. And by becoming more like who we truly are ourselves, if other people aren't doing that also, then we're growing further away from the societal norm, which is a double-edged sword, because, you know, I have a bird's eye view of the whole thing, because I understand it differently. I'm not as invested in the charade or the image, so those things don't bind my mind. I'm more free to see and express, and when you teach, you learn. Like if you're not teaching, you're not learning. You don't know what you know until you teach. And I know there are some people who are probably like shills, you know, plants in the sky watching community who control people with a secret. Like one day they're gonna like reveal some information. And the same people that will wait like years for this person to like tell them one damn thing are the same people who like are unsatisfied because I hold one thing back. Like they hold me to a standard that's like 10, 100,000, a million times higher than the people that they like vocally respect. And that's complete bullshit. You know, it's just because they're invested in it, and it's difficult. And anything that's difficult or expensive has value, and anything that's free and is given easily has doesn't have that same. It's not built into the brainwashing that everyone has that they're receiving something of value, which is why my GoFundMe account, which I don't even plan to access at this point, has $62 in it. But that's okay. It really is. I'm not even feeling better about it right now. I really don't care. But when you go that far away from everyone else's way of thinking, like, it changes everything on a fundamental level. Like, my perspective of time is totally different. My memory is totally different than other people's. I can remember just about every, probably, well, not all, but many of my supernatural experiences in full detail, but I can't remember. People be like, "You remember this?" And I'll be like, "No." And it was something that was like cool or important or, And one time this guy had to tell me like 10 times, and he had jumped off a friggin' cliff into the water, and me and one other guy were there. We were at a basketball tournament. He kept telling me about it, and I couldn't remember it all. Not at all. I had no memory of it at all. And after he said it like 5 times, and it might have even been days later, I remembered. But I had no recollection. So my memory is not normal. I'm sure the other guy that was there, I'm sure he'd remember that, because his life is full of more normal memories and occurrences. But, there's dues to pay and sacrifices we make to be who we are, no matter who we are. And, that fourth dimension, there's no getting around it unless you can overcome your fear. And, when somebody puts their fear onto me because, it gives them confirmation bias, or it tames their, resentment or jealousy that they're not doing what I'm doing, I understand, but that's abstract. Like, you can only progress so far spiritually with abstract fear. Like, in this 3D world, aren't there things that actually should be feared? Like, logically, and not like intangibly and esoterically? Concretely dangerous things that are likely to be dangerous by nature of just simple facts. But those things people don't want to look at, because the thought conditioning is so ingrained in people that they don't want to see that a pit bull might bite their hand off. They don't, they'll be like, "Oh, a German Shepherd's a really smart dog," or "That Chihuahua's really small and yippy." They'll talk about the breeds of animals like they're so different, even if it's the same. It's a dog. The same thing with any other animal, but you don't want to apply that to humans because you're under brainwashing to be equal, which makes you stupid. It makes you stupid, and it makes you a slave to the people who tell you that you need to think that way. And not only that, but you're supposed to be like angry at people who don't think that way. And I'm not going to fucking think that way because I'm not stupid, and I'm not a slave, and I'm not afraid. And that's why I can do what I do. And that's why I'm trying to teach you how not to fear. Because the things they tell you not to fear, you should fear. The things they're trying to tell you to fear, you should not fear, because they're lying. And they're lying because that's how they control you. So, I just explained to you the fourth dimension. They flipped everything upside down. Ever since Stranger Things came out, everyone was like, Stranger Things, the upside down. Congratulations, geniuses. You all now live in the upside down. That was probably like a ritual to get everyone into the upside down. Or enough people that they could just, people are waiting for a pole shift, but really, the poles shifted. You were waiting for the waters to rise. No, they're going to lie to you. And they're going to lie to you until you can break your brainwashing. And I can tell you the truth. Actually, a friend of mine today said, you can't tell them that, even if it's true, because then you're like the liberals who are telling them what to think. And I'm like, yeah, but are you saying that me saying the truth is like the same thing as those people that we know are lying? And I don't know if he responded or not. I didn't see one. But that's how strong the mind control is. And that's what I'm trying to help you with. I can do things other people can't do. Nobody else in the world can do what I do, and that's a fact. And if they can, I want to meet them, because they don't exist. They just don't. And that's a fact. So, if I'm trying to help you free your mind, and my resume is what it is, and it is, then maybe you should trust me. And if you can't trust me by now, I don't know how long you've known me, then I don't know, that's okay. Maybe we'll another day. But I guess the biggest thing is to learn to trust your own mind and have your own mind be separate from the groupthink. Because the groupthink, no matter what group you're thinking with, it is a prepackaged belief system, and therefore it's under control, and therefore you're trapped by the fourth dimension. The fear of stepping out of line, getting barked at by the sheepdog. There are some amazing powers at work in this world. I've met some incredibly unbelievable beings, intelligences, and aspects of the reality which God created. And I'm not going to speak for God or say what God thinks right now. That would just be like bad timing. But I don't know. I've done nothing but tell you the truth and prove it in photographs. So you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. The Bible says not to cast pearls before swine. Not that I'm saying any of you are swine. It just means that, like traditionally knowledge is given from mouth to ear, from student to disciple, but the world's become so messed up and so false that we don't have time for that, because there's really not enough people who know what I know. There's nobody else who knows what I know in the world. So I'm doing my best to impart my knowledge so you guys can help free the minds of others. But the problem is that, like with Dan Brown, like I'm his secret muse, his secret friend, his secret inspiration. And that holds everyone back. And that's why the damn earth shook, because he did wrong. So if you're learning from me, you're really supposed to be sharing the information, giving me credit. And listen, you can send people my links via Messenger and say, look at this idiot. Isn't he wrong? And, that's safe for you, and I don't mind. I really don't. But the information has to get out there. And that's why it's 1 a.m. and I'm making this. So do what you want. You have free will. Well, you don't, because you're afraid to say things, think things, dress certain ways. You don't have you don't have freedom, and I'm giving you the option to learn what freedom is and go beyond the fourth dimension. And very few of you are going to want to. You think you want to, but don't tell me you want to. Prove it. Prove it to yourself, not even to me. Why would you care what I think? Prove it to yourself, because if you said out loud to yourself right now, yeah, I want to do that, you probably wouldn't believe yourself. So spend some time with yourself, give it some thought, and let me know. And that's all. Jonny Ameru-Ryen out.